Did we sleep together? My boss asked me that the morning after I carried her home. She couldn't remember anything after the investor dinner. By then, half the office had already decided the answer. They were wrong. And one anonymous photograph was about to destroy both our careers. But before I tell you what really happened, you need to understand one thing. Claire Whitman was the last person anyone expected to lose control. She stood in the doorway of her office with red eyes and a question that froze every breath in my chest. She looked at me like I was the only person in the world who could either save her dignity or destroy what little piece she had left. I didn't answer right away because the real story started 12 hours earlier on a rooftop with a woman nobody thought needed saving. I was the kind of employee people looked past, not because I wasn't good at my job, but because I was good at making other people's problems disappear before anyone noticed they existed. At Meridian Group, I arrived before the lights were fully on and left after everyone important had gone home. My boss, Claire, was the opposite of invisible. She entered a room and the temperature changed, sharp, polished, the kind of brilliant that made senior managers sit up straighter without knowing why. Most people called her cold. I called her tired. I noticed the way she rubbed her wrist when someone else got credit for her work, the way her smile when she forced one never reached her eyes. I told myself noticing was all I was allowed to do. She was my boss. I didn't know yet that noticing was where it always starts. The investor lunch was supposed to be her triumph. 2 years of work on the line. She was flawless. The room leaned toward her, one nod at a time until the applause came, the kind you can't fake your way into. Then her father arrived. Richard Whitman, founder of Meridian, the kind of powerful that made grown executives shrink in doorways. He shook every hand in the room, praised the team. Not her, not once. When someone mentioned her presentation, he said only, "Discipline was expected from leadership, not celebrated." I watched something behind her eyes go out, quick, controlled, almost invisible. By 6 o'clock, the woman who never lost control of a room had lost control of herself. Nobody in that office was willing to help her home. I almost walked away too, not because I didn't care, because I knew exactly what people would assume if they saw us leave together. I stood there longer than I should have, weighing my own reputation against a woman who clearly had no one else in that room willing to notice she needed help. Then I stopped weighing it. I was the only one who moved. I told myself it was decency. I had no idea it was about to become the most dangerous decision of my career. The ride to her apartment took 20 minutes. It felt longer. She sat with her head against the window, talking in fragments. The presentation, her father, how applause sounds different when the one person you want to hear it from refuses to clap. I didn't have anything wise to say, so I just listened. That, it turned out, was exactly what she needed. Her apartment surprised me. I expected expensive furniture and perfect magazine rooms. Instead, there were books stacked beside the couch, a forgotten cup of tea, a blanket folded by hand. A faded childhood photograph turned slightly toward the wall, like even she couldn't bear looking at the little girl she used to be. She stopped in the hallway and whispered that she was sorry. Claire Whitman didn't apologize to anyone, not at work, not ever. But here, she sounded like a woman who had spent years afraid of being a burden to anyone at all. I laid her down on the couch, not the bedroom. I told myself that mattered. I told myself I needed the reminder. Because some part of me, quiet, unwanted, completely inconvenient, had noticed the way she'd said my name for the first time that night. Not Carter, not the assistant. Ryan. I put it away. I had no right to keep it. Before I left, she caught my sleeve. Her grip was weak, but it wasn't letting go. She asked why I was being kind to her when she'd never once been kind to me. I could have said something easy. Instead, I told her the truth. Because somebody should be. Her eyes filled. Then she said something I didn't understand, and she was asleep before I could ask her to repeat it. I stayed 20 minutes to make sure she was breathing steady. Wrote a note, let myself out. I believed surviving that night was the hardest part. I was wrong. The real disaster started Monday morning. By the time Claire asked me her question, "Did we?" I told her everything. The couch, the water, the note, the exact minute I left. Her face broke open in a way I'd never seen. Not the drunk woman on the couch, a boss standing in front of an employee she'd underestimated for years. "No," I said. Nothing happened. For the first time in 2 years, she looked at me like I was a person, not a name on a staffing chart. I thought that answer would end the nightmare. I couldn't have been more wrong. 48 hours later, HR called us in separately. Someone had sent an anonymous photo to compliance, grainy, taken from across the street, time-stamped just past 6 p.m. Me, half carrying Claire through the lobby doors. No context, no explanation. Just enough to look exactly like what it wasn't. I sat outside HR's office with my stomach in my throat, running through every version of "I'm going to lose my job" I could think of. Down the hall, Claire waited for her own meeting, doing the same math with far more to lose. At one point, they put us in the same small conference room for 10 minutes while a second investigator finished up elsewhere. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhausted that has nothing left to perform for anyone. Without thinking, I slid a bottle of water across the table toward her. She looked at it, then at me. No words, just the smallest nod. It was the first silent conversation we'd ever had. Neither of us knew yet who had sent the photo. I had a guess. So did Claire. Neither of us said his name out loud because neither of us wanted to be wrong, and both of us were terrified of being right. Grant Weller had been circling for weeks, the senior manager who smiled too easily in meetings and remembered every mistake anyone else made longer than they did. He'd said it once already, loud enough for the room to hear, that some employees gained influence through personal access rather than ability. At the time, Claire had shut him down cold. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The day the HR meetings were announced, Grant walked past my desk slower than usual. He smiled, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes it's aimed at. "Funny thing about reputations," he said. "They're easier to ruin than build." Then he kept walking, like he hadn't just told me exactly what he'd done. 2 days later, Grant requested a private call with 2 of Meridian's largest investors. He didn't mention me by name. He didn't have to. He mentioned concerns about leadership judgment, optics, the kind of story that follows a company. By Friday, Richard Whitman had heard a version of the story that had nothing to do with a couch, a note, or 20 careful minutes making sure his daughter was safe. Claire found her father waiting in her office when she got back from lunch. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. He asked her, flatly, whether she understood what she'd risked, not for herself, but for the company that carried his name. She didn't tell him the truth. She wasn't sure yet that the truth would matter to him. That was the week I learned what it actually cost to do the right thing when no one was supposed to be watching. It cost me sleep. It cost me the easy nod Claire used to give me in the hallway, replaced now with a careful guarded distance neither of us chose. It cost me, more than once, the urge to just explain myself to whoever would listen, and the discipline not to, because explaining myself meant explaining her, and I wasn't going to do that to protect my own name. What I didn't expect was the coffee. It started small. A cup black, exactly how I took it, left on my desk on a morning I'd forgotten to eat breakfast. No note, no explanation. Just there, still warm, like it had been placed there by someone who happened to notice things too. I looked up. Claire was already 3 desks away, not looking back, a single word left on a sticky note stuck to the side of the cup. Eat. I stared at the cup for a long time. Funny how the smallest acts of kindness can feel louder than grand gestures, especially when you're pretending not to care. I didn't say anything about it. Neither did she. It happened again the following week, and the week after that. Nobody else in the office noticed. That was the point. 3 weeks into the investigation, no formal charges, no resolution, just the low hum of a company waiting to see which way a rumor would break. I was pulling blueprints from a shared drawer when Claire reached for the same folder at the same time. Our hands landed together on the edge of the paper. Neither of us moved for a second longer than the moment required. Then both of us pulled back at once, too fast, too obvious. Neither of us said anything. Neither of us had to. It was Claire who finally said it out loud, late one evening, the office empty except for the two of us and a security guard 3 floors down. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. Every favor I've ever accepted came with a price. My father's name, my last promotion. Every person who's ever done something for me wanted something back eventually. She turned then, and there was nothing guarded left in her face. You're the first person who hasn't asked me for anything. I don't know what to do with that. I didn't have an answer for that either. Some things don't need one. The truth about the photo came out the way most quiet betrayals do, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a routine security audit. The building's after-hours camera log showed a login from Grant Weller's credentials at 6:47 p.m., the night of the rooftop event, pulled from a terminal nobody used unless they were looking for something specific. Compliance didn't need much more than that. Grant didn't get the dramatic exit he probably imagined for himself. He got a quiet meeting, a severance conversation, and a box under his arm on a Tuesday morning, while the rest of the office pretended very hard to be looking at their screens. Nobody said his name out loud either. They didn't have to. Richard Whitman never apologized. Not exactly. I suspected he didn't know how. But 2 weeks after Grant left, he stopped by Claire's office, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, he told her the investor project had been the best work Meridian had produced in a decade. And he wasn't just saying that because it was hers. That was as close as he came. The rest of it changed slowly. The way real things do, Claire started saying good morning like she meant it. She stopped letting managers speak over me in meetings. When I caught 3 serious problems in a logistics proposal, she gave me full credit for it, out loud, in front of the people who mattered. And this time, nobody in the room had a photo, an anonymous tip, or a reason to whisper about why. Months later, on an ordinary Thursday with nothing on the calendar to explain it, I found an envelope on my desk. Not a memo, not a project brief. Cream-colored paper, my name written in handwriting I'd have recognized anywhere by now. Inside was a single line. Dinner, Saturday, not as your boss. I read it twice. Down the hall, through the glass wall of her office, Claire was watching me read it, not pretending otherwise for once. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked nervous. Not like a CEO. Just like a woman hoping the answer would be yes. I never told anyone whether I went. People still ask me if anything happened that night. The answer has never changed. No, nothing happened. At least, not that night. The real story didn't begin on her couch. It began the moment someone trusted me with the worst night of her life, and I chose to protect it instead of taking advantage of it. Looking back, I'm grateful she couldn't remember that evening. Because if she had, she might never have discovered the man I really was. And I might never have discovered the woman hidden behind the title on her office door. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with a kiss. They begin with a choice. A choice to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. If this story reminded you that the quiet ones are usually the ones who protect us most, hit subscribe to Behind Closed Doors and comment "Trust" if you'd have made the same choice. New confessions every week. You won't want to miss the next one.